The Secrets of the Heart. Asterisk asterisk. The Secrets of the Heart. Chapter 1. The Weight of Unspoken Words. The grand ballroom of the Pearl Continental Hotel was bathed in the warm, golden glow of massive crystal chandeliers. Melodious classical music drifted through the air, mingling with the soft chatter and laughter of the city's elite. It was the wedding reception of Zayn and Sarah, a match that everyone deemed perfect. Zayn, a brilliant and successful architect, looked dashing in his tailored black tuxedo. Beside him sat Sarah, radiant and breathtaking in her intricately embroidered ivory bridal dress. To the world, they were the definition of a fairy tale. But amidst the sea of smiling faces, standing near the balcony doors, was a man whose heart felt like a hollow chamber. Zaryab clutched his glass of water, his knuckles turning white. He was Zayn's younger brother. He possessed the same sharp jawline and deep-set eyes as Zayn, but unlike his brother's charismatic and outgoing nature, Zaryab was quiet, observant, and intensely private. He was a writer, a man who spent his life pored over pages, capturing the emotions of fictional characters because he was too terrified to face his own. Zaryab's gaze was fixed on Sarah. As she laughed at something Zayn said, Zaryab felt a familiar, sharp pang in his chest. It was a secret he had buried so deeply in the recesses of his soul that he had almost convinced himself it didn't exist. He was completely, irrevocably in love with his brother's new wife. He remembered the first day he had met Sarah, 3 years ago at an art exhibition. She had been standing in front of a painting of a solitary lighthouse amidst a raging storm. Zaryab had stood beside her, and without looking at him, she had softly commented on the brushstrokes, capturing the exact emotion he had felt looking at the canvas. They had talked for hours that night. She was a painter herself, vibrant, artistic, and deeply empathetic. For 2 years, they shared a profound, unspoken connection. Zaryab had found his muse, his confidant, his safe haven. He had spent months gathering the courage to tell her how he felt, writing his feelings into poems and stories that never left his drawer. But Zaryab was a man who moved too slowly, paralyzed by the fear of rejection. Zayn, on the other hand, was a man of action. A year ago, Zayn had met Sarah through a mutual family gathering. Struck by her beauty and grace, Zayn did not hesitate. Within weeks, he had proposed. Their families were ecstatic. When Zayn had excitedly broken the news to Zaryab, a heavy, invisible curtain had fallen over Zaryab's world. He had looked at his brother's glowing face and realized that his silence had cost him his happiness. To protect his brother's joy and family honor, Zaryab had locked his feelings away, sealing his heart with a vow of absolute silence. "Hey, little brother," a voice broke his trance. Zayn walked over, a wide grin on his face, draping an arm around Zaryab's shoulder. "Why are you standing here in the dark? Come join us." Sarah was just asking where her favorite storyteller went. Zaryab forced a smile, masking the storm inside him. "Just getting some fresh air, bye. The crowd is a bit overwhelming. You look great. Congratulations again." "Thanks, man. I'm the luckiest guy alive," Zayn said, his eyes softening as he looked back at Sarah. "Go talk to her, okay? She's a bit nervous around all these corporate people I invited. She needs a friend." A friend. The word tasted like ash in Zaryab's mouth. "Sure, bye. I'll be there in a minute." Chapter 2. The Silent House. 6 months passed. The initial euphoria of the wedding faded into the routine of daily life. Zayn and Sarah moved into a beautiful, modern house designed by Zayn himself. Zaryab, who lived in the family's ancestral home a few blocks away, visited them occasionally, but only when his mother insisted. Every visit was a test of his endurance. However, beneath the polished surface of Zayn and Sarah's marriage, hairline cracks were beginning to show. Zayn's architectural firm had secured a massive international project, demanding all of his time. He left early in the morning and returned late at night, exhausted and distracted. Sarah found herself alone in a massive, echoing house. Her paints and canvases sat untouched in the corner of her studio. The vibrant girl who used to find magic in ordinary things was slowly being consumed by loneliness. One rainy afternoon, Zaryab was asked by his mother to drop off some homemade sweets at Zayn's house. When he rang the bell, Sarah opened the door. She was wearing a simple gray outfit, her hair tied loosely, and her eyes looked hollow. "Zaryab, come in," she said, her face lighting up with genuine warmth for the first time in weeks. "I didn't expect anyone today. Ami sent these," Zaryab said, stepping into the foyer. He noticed the absolute silence of the house. "Is Zayn not home?" Sarah's smile faltered slightly. "No, He had an emergency meeting with some foreign investors. He probably won't be back until midnight. She shook her head, trying to clear the sadness from her face. But please, sit. I'll make some coffee. I really need the company. As Zaryab sat in the living room, he looked around. The house was structurally perfect, but it lacked warmth. It felt like a museum, not a home. When Sarah returned with 2 mugs, she sat across from him, wrapping her hands around the warm ceramic. How is your new book coming along? She asked softly. It's slow, Zaryab replied, looking into his coffee. I'm struggling with the protagonist. He has a secret he can't share with anyone, and it's destroying him from the inside. I'm trying to figure out how a person survives that kind of emotional isolation. Sarah went completely still. She looked at Zaryab, her gaze intense and searching. Sometimes, she said, her voice dropping to a whisper, the secrets we keep aren't choices. They are shields. We hide things to protect the people we love, even if it means destroying ourselves. Zaryab's heart skipped a beat. The air between them grew heavy with unsaid things. He looked at her, seeing the profound sadness in her eyes, and for a terrifying second, he wondered if she knew. Did she know his secret? Or was she harboring a secret of her own? Sarah, are you happy? The question escaped his lips before he could stop it. It was a dangerous question, a breach of the boundary he had so carefully constructed. Sarah looked away, a single tear escaping her eye and tracing a path down her cheek. Zayn is a good man, Zaryab. He works so hard for our future. She paused, her voice trembling. But sometimes, I feel like he loves the future he is building more than the person he is building it with. I feel invisible. Zaryab's hands shook. Every instinct in his body screamed at him to reach out, to comfort her, to tell her that she was the center of his universe, that he would never leave her invisible. But the image of his brother's trusting face flashed in his mind. Zayn loves you, Sarah, Zaryab said, forcing the words out of his throat, even though they tore at his vocal cords. He just doesn't know how to express it under all this pressure. Talk to him. Don't keep this inside. Sarah looked back at him, giving him a sad, knowing smile. Thank you, Zaryab. You always know what to say. When Zaryab left the house that evening, the rain was pouring down violently. He walked into the storm, letting the cold water wash over him, crying tears that nobody would ever see. He had spent his life writing tragedies, but he never realized he was living the most painful one. Chapter 3. The Discovery. A year into the marriage, tragedy struck the family from an unexpected direction. Zayn was driving back from a late-night site inspection when a reckless truck driver broke a signal and rammed directly into his car. The phone call in the middle of the night shattered the family's peace. Zaryab and his parents rushed to the hospital, finding Sarah already there, trembling and pale, her clothes stained with Zayn's blood. The doctors worked tirelessly for 8 hours. Zayn survived, but the damage was severe. A spinal cord injury had left him paralyzed from the waist down. The vibrant, successful, independent man was suddenly confined to a wheelchair, his thriving career brought to a screeching halt. The months that followed were dark and grueling. Zayn, unable to cope with his sudden helplessness, sank into a deep, bitter depression. He lashed out at everyone, especially Sarah. He hated the pity he saw in people's eyes, and his insecurity turned him into a stranger. He accused Sarah of staying with him only out of obligation and guilt. Sarah bore his anger with immense patience. She became his caregiver, his nurse, his emotional anchor, sacrificing her health and sleep. Zaryab stepped up to manage Zayn's business affairs, doing everything he could to relieve the burden on Sarah. He became a constant presence in their house, helping Zayn move, managing his therapy sessions, and organizing his medical records. One evening, Zayn had fallen asleep after a particularly violent emotional outburst. Sarah was sitting at the study table, her head resting on her arms, asleep from sheer exhaustion. Zaryab entered the study quietly to look for Zayn's insurance documents. As he opened the bottom drawer of the desk, his hand brushed against an old, dust-covered leather notebook. It wasn't Zayn's handwriting on the cover, it was Sarah's. Curiosity overcame his sense of privacy. He stepped into the hallway light and opened the notebook. It was a personal diary from her college years, stretching up to the months before her wedding. Zaryab flipped through the pages, reading her thoughts about art, life, and loneliness. And then, his eyes caught a page dated exactly 2 weeks before Zayn had proposed to her. Greater than, I am waiting for him to speak. Every time Zaryab looks at me, I see a universe of words in his eyes, yet his lips remain sealed. Does he not see that I am drowning in his silence? I feel a connection with him that I have never felt with anyone else. His soul matches mine, but he is a shadow, refusing to step into the light. Meanwhile, his brother Zayn has entered my life like a whirlwind. Zayn is loud, clear, and certain. My parents love him. He wants to marry me. If Zaryab doesn't say something soon, I will have to accept Zayn. I cannot chase a man who refuses to be found. Oh Zaryab, please, break your silence. Asterisk. Greater than. The notebook slipped from Zaryab's fingers, hitting the floor with a soft thud. The walls of the corridor seemed to close in on him, suffocating him. The truth hit him like a physical blow, knocking the breath from his lungs. Sarah hadn't just been his love, she had loved him back. His silence wasn't a noble sacrifice that protected her, it was the mistake that had ruined both of their lives. If he had spoken, if he had shown even a shred of courage, the trajectory of their destinies would have been entirely different. He leaned against the wall, sliding down to the floor, his heart breaking into 1,000 irreparable pieces. The deepest secret of his heart was never a one-sided illusion. It was a shared truth, lost forever in the graveyard of unspoken words. Chapter 4. The Confession of a Diary. Sarah woke up with a start, the cold night air making her shiver. She rubbed her eyes and noticed the hallway light streaming into the dark study. She stood up, stretching her aching muscles, and walked out. She froze when she saw Zaryab sitting on the floor, his face buried in his knees, his shoulders shaking with silent, violent sobs. On the floor beside him lay her old leather diary, open to the page she had written years ago. A gasp escaped her lips. She covered her mouth, her eyes widening in shock. Zaryab looked up, his eyes red, filled with an agony so profound that it frightened her. He picked up the diary with trembling hands and held it out to her. Why didn't you tell me? His voice was a broken whisper, cracked with years of suppressed pain. Why didn't you give me a sign, Sarah? Sarah stood rooted to the spot, tears flooding her eyes. The secret that both of them had carried for years was suddenly laid bare between them, stripping away all defenses. A sign. Sarah laughed bitterly through her tears, stepping closer. Zaryab, I spent 2 years giving you signs. I painted for you, I talked to you, I shared my deepest thoughts with you. Every time we were together, I was screaming with my eyes for you to hold my hand. But you always pulled back. You always hid behind your books and your silence. I am a woman, Zaryab. I needed certainty. I couldn't build my life on a man's unspoken glances. I was afraid. Zaryab cried out, standing up, his voice echoing in the quiet corridor. I was a penniless writer. Zayn was successful, stable, everything a family could want. I thought I wasn't enough for you. I thought by staying silent, I was letting you have a better life. A better life. Sarah stepped directly in front of him, her chest heaving. Look at this house, Zaryab. Look at my life. I married a man I respected, a man who loved me, but my soul was always empty. And now Zayn is broken, and I am breaking with him. We are all trapped in a tragedy of your making. The raw honesty of her words shattered whatever was left of Zaryab's composure. They stood inches apart, the air thick with the ghost of the love that could have been. For a fleeting, desperate second, the boundaries of brother, wife, and duty vanished. There were only two souls, mourning a lost universe. I love you, Sarah, Zaryab whispered, the words finally crossing his lips after years of imprisonment. I have loved you since the moment I saw you at that exhibition. And I will love you until my very last breath. Sarah closed her eyes, letting out a shaky breath, more tears flowing down her face. Hearing those words was everything she had ever wanted years ago, but hearing them now felt like a cruel punishment. It's too late, Zaryab, she whispered, opening her eyes, looking at him with deep sorrow. It is years too late. I am Zayn's wife. He is paralyzed, he is broken, and he needs me more than ever. Even if my heart belongs somewhere else, my duty, my loyalty, and my life belong to him. We can never speak of this again. Zaryab nodded slowly, the crushing weight of reality settling back over him. I know, he said softly. I needed to know that I wasn't crazy. That what I felt was real. It was real, Sarah whispered, picking up her diary from the floor. But some secrets are meant to die in the heart. Chapter 5. Redemption and Acceptance. The next morning, Zaryab packed his bags. He knew he could no longer stay in the same city, breathing the same air, without destroying himself or the people he loved. He accepted a writing residency in a remote, peaceful town in the northern mountains, a place far away from the echoes of his past. Before he left, he went to see Zane. Zane was sitting by the window in his wheelchair, looking out at the garden. For the first time in months, his face looked calm. Bye, Zaryab called out gently. Zane turned around, seeing the suitcase in Zaryab's hand. So, you're really leaving for the mountains? Yes, bye. The publishers are pushing for the manuscript, and I need absolute isolation to finish it, Zaryab lied smoothly. Zane looked at his younger brother for a long, quiet moment. The bitterness that had consumed Zane for months seemed to have lessened. He rolled his wheelchair closer and took Zaryab's hand. Thank you, Zaryab, Zane said, his voice sincere and thick with emotion. For everything you did for my business, for me, and for taking care of Sarah when I couldn't. I know I've been a monster lately, but having you around kept this family together. Zaryab swallowed the lump in his throat, squeezing his brother's hand. You are my brother, Zane. Your happiness is all I ever wanted. I know, Zane smiled sadly. Go write your masterpiece. And Zaryab, write a happy ending for once. The world has enough tragedies. Zaryab walked out of the house without looking back. Sarah was standing on the terrace, watching him leave. They did not wave, they did not smile. They simply exchanged one last, profound look, a silent funeral for a love that never got its chance to live. In the mountains, surrounded by towering peaks and endless skies, Zaryab found a strange kind of peace. He channeled all of his grief, his love, his secrets, and his Paktawa regret into his writing. He wrote a novel about a man who lost his world to silence, teaching his readers that the human heart is a fragile vessel. If you do not speak its truth, the secrets inside will eventually shatter it. His book became an international bestseller, touching millions of lives. He never married, choosing to live a life devoted to his art. Back in the city, Zane's health gradually improved with therapy, and he eventually regained partial mobility. Sarah stayed by his side, finding a deeper, resilient form of affection and companionship with her husband. They built a quiet, content life out of the ruins of their tragedy. The secrets of the heart remained buried, never spoken of again, preserved in the sacred silence of the past. Zaryab had learned the hardest lesson of life. Love does not always mean possession. Sometimes, the ultimate test of love is having the strength to let it go, ensuring the peace of the ones you hold dear.